Hey everybody, it's Stephen and Anthony. We're here with our good friend Manuel Zazueta, and we're really excited to have a little conversation. Manuel has been a big deal and in the international scene for a good while now. He works with kids nursery through high school. He's a regular full-time music teacher. He's from Mexico, but he's teaching in Vietnam and has taught on 3 continents. He's like kind of a cool dude. And he hasn't yet gotten our book in hand. And so today we wanted to have a conversation with him, try to explain to him a little bit of what it is Make It Music has become, or what it is, and what the ideas behind it were, and then see if we could get him to just talk with us about it a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Manuel, for coming.
Hi, no, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really excited about this book and seeing what it's about. I'd have a hard copy, but it's kind of far away.
Well, we just have a friend in Thailand. She just sent us pictures of her opening it up in Bangkok. So we'll have to get one out to you in Vietnam.
I'll have to get one then.
She probably broke the bank on shipping, I bet. But yeah, we're working on the international distribution. It's our publisher is working on that as we speak. It should be available more readily internationally soon.
That's awesome news.
So basically, Manuel, we'll just tell you a little bit of how the idea kind of got started and a little bit of the chronology of Stephen and I's sort of collaboration. I kind of give you a little background. So Stephen is the head of the training center at Carnegie Mellon, which is where I did my training, and we've known each other for over a decade now, and he's been a mentor to me and he's followed my work. And at some point he said to me, we should talk about writing a book. And, we didn't really have an idea about what. We just thought it would be interesting to collaborate on something. So we started kicking around ideas. And one of the questions we kept asking ourselves is, well, why is it so difficult to write books about this work? And why aren't there more books, right? Have you noticed that it's like our work is not like book centric, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of oral tradition.
Yeah, it's passed down that way. You learn from your mentors and your master teachers, and you study under them, and you soak up their bit, and it's experiential in a way that makes it difficult to write books. Other teaching traditions are more book oriented. They have like the seminal text, like this is our holy text of our work, and ours is not like that, right? So and we kind of discussed a little bit of some of the reasons that we think that is, and one of the reasons that we came up with is this idea that or at least the way that we do it, we don't teach from a script, right? There's no set sequence of lesson ideas. There's no script that we use. What we do is we have an idea about what we'd like to do with this particular group in this particular moment, and and sometimes that changes as we go, right? You might get an idea or an inspiration during your thing, right?
This is planning for one lesson. Right. This is the planning for the whole lesson. I mean, It's just like ideas on a notebook, and then they just come to life when I'm with the students. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what happens.
If you haven't studied under a master teacher or been a part of a long program, I would think it's on the verge of impossible to kind of know how it is that you would spin these lessons out and be able to adjust to the groups that you're working with. And yet that has become really the most exciting part of our practice. That is personally my practice, the teaching that I do, and I know Anthony has a similar experience, that the thing that keeps it energizing and keeps it exciting and keeps it artful is the fact that we get to be creative and we get to be improvising within these traditions. And so we were talking like, well, what are the ways that we could start to get to some of that? And so some of that was early in our conversation. As we talked, we definitely didn't start off with we just decided we'd meet weekly and just compare ideas about what it is about our own work that was exciting to us or that was fulfilling to us. And we ended up at a point thinking, oh, I think this really is going to be a book. And then we instead of trying to say, this is the Dalcroze pedagogy text where you're going to get all the nitty gritty, all the little bits and all the details. Instead, what we ended up with was really a much more approachable introduction to the work. So this isn't in any way all the things that anybody could talk about. Instead, I really have been thinking of it as a really lovely intro, a welcome, an invitation into some of the spaces that is a Dalcroze classroom. And in the introduction, which is this book, the whole first third of the book is really just introducing two ideas. Anthony, do you want to talk, or do you want me to keep on going with these
Sure.
two?
No, yeah, I could jump in there so like the first idea is kind of what we said. We call it open-ended lesson planning, which is just like your little notebook there is like, hey, the lesson plan doesn't have to be set in stone. You go in there and it spins to life as you're in there. You make these decisions in the moment. It's open-ended to a certain degree, right?
We're not at all opposed. We make a nice point in the book that says, no, we're very pro lesson plan, especially new teachers. You really want to go in with a plan and like 20 extra plans, because who knows how things are going to go. Where I have a practice of writing down a lot of what it is that I plan to do in a day. I've done that for years and years and years. But I'm most excited and most proud when at the end of my day, my lesson plan is just full of scribbles, because I ended up doing completely different things or new ideas. Some student came up with they said a thing, they did a motion, some bit of conversation came up, some new inspiration occurred during the class, and I got to write it down or I'm going to forget how cool that was. And so that's the real mark of for me, a really successful day of teaching is when the first lesson plan that I had actually kind of went off the rails in 20 ways, and I instead found all of these new ideas. And so it's open-ended in that we show up with basic ideas. I think we're probably going to look in this direction today, and maybe I even know my opening exercise or two. But then really excited as I'm able to be inventive in the room and collaborate with my students in some way where we together are co-creating some.
Mm-hmm. And then,
Exactly, because we don't know what the students are gonna how are they gonna react to your plan. So you have to test the waters. You have to see what's gonna happen, and depending on the day, the time of day, and their mood and your mood as well, things evolve, things change, and I think it's great this approach that you're having. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a villain from The Flash said, make a plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go up in flames, throw away the plan. And
Is it Anthony? You might the Mike Tyson. He said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
that's my favorite quote. Mike Tyson said, "Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face." That's my
right.
that's exactly right. And that's what happens. So you go to class, that class punches you in the face, and you got, okay, we got to roll with it. What's the next thing, right? And so that's the first priority of the book, really, is to develop that flexibility, that responsiveness. And then the second priority is this idea of you, the teacher, as an artist, like crafting these lessons, executing them, being present in the moment, making the creative choices that we make to create these moments of beauty is an artistic expression. It just is. And I wish more teachers embraced themselves as an artist and not just a transmitter of information or some
Yes,
sort
please.
of worker or even psychiatrist. It's like really about this expression that and the children love that.
And so we encourage everybody who's reading the book to take on the mantle of a teaching artist. Instead of saying I'm a teacher, we want to challenge everybody to start to think of themselves with the artist heading tied to their name. I'm a teaching artist. And so with that then comes the practice of artistry. And so we talk in the book about what are some examples of artists that we don't question, whether it's the performing artist, it's the conductor, or it's a painter, or it's a drama, it's an actor. All of those places where art and creativity is happening, they have practices, and we actually can find most of those same ideas in a teaching practice that is vibrant and alive and reactive. And so we're working in ensemble, we're working in time, in the moment, we're working with, not just beside, we're not just banging instructions at our students, but we're really inviting them into some sort of shared experience. And we're improvising. So much of what we're doing is, of course, the eurythmics teacher is spending some amount of time likely improvising on whatever their instrument is, but we're also improvising in our freedom with the lesson plan, so that even though I on my lesson plan I said A, B, C, when I realized, oh, I needed D, E, and F to make this lesson really come alive, that isn't a mark of my failing because I didn't do all the parts of my lesson plan. It's a mark of me winning and expressing my own creativity and my own artistry, which is so much better than ignoring my students and demanding that they all do the first three things that were on my lesson.
So I'd be interested in what you think about this. So we trying to describe what the mindset is, what's going on in our mind as we're teaching our lessons in this moment, okay? And the way I described it was that in my mind, I've got what I call a Rolodex, or what we might call like a catalog of various lesson ideas, little fragments, little bits that I've picked up over the years, little tidbits that I've learned from the myriad of teachers I've been around, and I've got this stack of ideas in my head, and in any moment that something interesting happens, I can flip through and I can find the little nugget and I can pull it out and say, oh, we should do this, let's do this, and I can use that. But the trouble is, I've accumulated that stack of ideas over decades of eurythmic study, and dozens of teachers that I've been around it, and you can't expect anybody to just pick that up. So what we decided to do was try to actually physically make the Rolodex, to try to physically make the cards of the different fragments. How many different eurythmic lesson fragments can we put on cards? And can we make them in a way in which that you can combine them and put them together to make cohesive eurythmic style lessons? You following?
Oh, this sounds great.
Yeah. So we ended up with four decks of cards. It took us a while. We played with this for a good while, trying to figure out a good formula that seemed to make sense. We ended up with four decks of cards. The first deck is called the starter deck. The second deck is called the Make It Music deck. The third deck are called challenges, and the strategy cards are in there as well. And then we have a fourth deck called the teaching artist deck. And so the way the game works is we're thinking very much about a new teacher or somebody who's new to these practices. So maybe you've been teaching under a different pedagogy for years and years, but you want to get a bit more movement into your class. You want to be influenced or be inspired by some of these Dalcroze participatory exercises. You want to get more of the feeling body and the presence of live music in your classroom. Then you can, of course, go study in any of the training centers around the world, or maybe you could play around with this game. So we start off with the starter deck, and all the starter cards there's 50 cards, and they're just 50, the first 20 seconds of 50 lessons that have yet to be built. And so they're the most obvious to us, and I think to you, you'll read them and go, oh, well, of course, we could have done that. What's really great is that we take each one of these cards just gives us just the very beginning of some interaction, some way to engage or get the class going. Anthony, we want to read that one for us?
I can't read it because it's backwards.
You're going to have to get
walking
closer.
Through space, stop the rhythm of a familiar melody while clapping the beat.
Yes.
All right.
It says step the rhythm of a familiar melody while clapping the beat. Okay. So that's continuous rhythm. Okay. So maybe if you saw that card, this is actually a pretty complex one, but if
yes.
So Manuel, what would you do with that prompt? I'll say it again.
Show it to me again.
Show it to yourself, Anthony, and read it.
Okay, it says here. It says, well, it's card 1024. It says, walking through space, step the rhythm of a familiar melody while clapping the beat.
Well, I can get them to either. We can all sing a melody, or I can play a melody for them, or I can play and they can also sing the melody. But that's maybe adding another something, and just I would try to look for a melody would have a rhythmic pattern that would suit my purpose in the class.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, you pull out a melody, something that they might kind of know. I'm thinking,
Hmm.
like you could teach them one, but if you're not sure, but you pick out something that you guys probably know, Pop Goes the Weasel or whatever you're into, okay, and then we're gonna do that, and then clap the beat while we step the melody. So we're gonna try to keep the beat going while we step the melody. That would be a fun challenge. Just,
Hmm.
whatever. If you're dealing with younger children, maybe you would forego the stepping or forego the clapping part. But okay, so you've stepped that, you've got that going, but at a
Hmm.
certain point, I mean, how long can you do that for?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right. I mean,
so the starter deck is not at all intended to be a full lesson or a full exercise. It really is just the starter. It's just something you can do that gets everybody doing something. So the basic recipe of this of not at all every Dalcroze lesson, but many Dalcroze lessons, it's a common formula where we think do a thing, figure out where the music in that engagement is, and then invent variations on it. And so then we think, oh, well, how many different ways could we play with this? And so we try to make whatever
right.
the exercises that we're involved in, we try to get it to be more playful. So if we start here with walking the rhythm of a melody, and maybe clapping the beat at the same time, we think, well, what could we do next? Where does that go? And so here, this one, find a way to split the class into two groups. And so the Make It Music deck is trying to find
Hmm.
ways to pull in now musical concepts. So all of a sudden, ensemble, make it music by having each group body a music element, maybe perform in canon, echo, or continuous. And so the idea of the second deck of cards is to look now for musical elements that can be pulled out of any of the starters. There's 50 different starter cards. Any one of them will pair with any of the 50 of the Make It Music cards. And so when I'm thinking about yeah, what I'm thinking about split the group into twos, so now all of a sudden there's some sort of attention to the ensemble in the room. We're not all in unison all the time, so there's counterpoint that's going on. There's leadership and following, there's melody and accompaniment, there's all sorts of opportunities for this back and forth playing. Also, the two groups could easily turn into duos. So I have like half the group, and once we figure out what this half of the room and that half of the room is doing, it wouldn't be that hard to then pair up with each other. Somebody from group one and somebody from group two, you're now a couple, and we're now in duet space as we're going.
Hmm. Oh
Right. So
man, this is awesome. It's like Cards Against Humanity.
it is. It's Dalcroze Cards Against Humanity. It's
but
cards
but a
for
very
humanity.
but a very constructive version of it.
So again, when we think about any of these cards, none of them are a whole lesson, none of them finish a whole thing. And so we think, well, how long will that work now? So if we started off, we were just trying to do a basic rhythm game, a bit of just notice that there's rhythm in some song, and we're going to try to body it in some way by walking that rhythm, as the first card was offering. Then we randomly pull up a second card, and it says, oh, how about half the room and half the room? Okay, well now I've got a variation on the first thing. So maybe the first half of the room just watches while the second half of the room goes. Now maybe we're taking turns. Maybe we figure out a way for the first half of the room to do the first phrase and the second half of the room to do the second phrase. We're looking for different ways to sort of make use of the two halves of the room. And
Mm.
the three of us could, of course, riff on this for a while, just as we sit here. But at some point, maybe we think, okay, that's kind of run its course. I can feel this lesson starting to slow down or starting to stale. And before it gets bad or before I lose the room, I need some sort of incentive to get something going. So the challenge cards are the trickiest of them, and they give us things that are less direct. So the very first two decks are pretty direct. Do this thing, and then make
Hmm.
it this way. But now let's see it one more time, Anthony.
Don't be afraid to use imagery.
And so the third deck, the challenge cards, are a bit of a challenge to whoever's playing with them because they're less direct. The whole point of the challenge deck is to spur creativity, to get the artist
Right.
they get the artist blood flowing. And maybe you've been in a practice where you're doing that kind of thing all the time, or maybe you're like, I kind of end up just doing all the same stuff I always do, and I'm a little sick of my practice. I want to push myself. Or maybe you believe you're in a highly inventive creative practice, and it's just fun to play with some new ideas that aren't your first ideas. So if we say don't be afraid to use imagery, and we have to now challenge ourselves to fit that into the first one, I'll let the two of you riff on that for a moment.
Oh no, but that's so great, because when you say don't be afraid to use imagery, okay, who are you talking to? Are you talking to the teacher, or are you talking to the students?
Very good.
Because if you say it, I mean, if I'm talking to a group of 8-year-olds, I mean, of course, I mean, that's no problem, and it's even great to use imagery. But I'm thinking of the older ones, of my year 10s, my year 11s, year 8s. I mean, some groups that it's just like pulling teeth. But when you get into, I remember one of my first Dalcroze lessons, they gave me a ridiculous diploma. So you can be as ridiculous as I can be as ridiculous as I want, because I have a diploma on it. So it's there. And that gives me permission to, like that, use imagery with the kids, so I can tell them, remember to use try to think like a river, or think like you're in the lake, or think that you are fishing and you are sending that line out, or you're doing this. So the quality of their movement changes, because that's what happens. Teachers always are like, okay, we do this exercise, we got it, now it's politically correct. I mean, it's okay in the sense of form. Now let's switch it up. Now let's build on that. Now, how can we make that exercise turn into an expression of movement, an expression of the music that you are listening to? And little phrases like that can really spark your imagination, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I love that you right away realized that the card could apply to either crowd or both crowds in the room, and that's very much
Mhm.
part of our intention
Mm.
as we're thinking about it. There are all sorts of things. We'll talk before we're done here about how we play the cards, whether we do it all private and the students never see the cards, or the students do see the cards and we tell them overtly what we're doing.
Mhm.
You can play it either way. But a card like that can be used in lots of ways. I was just picturing, if half the room it walks the first phrase and half the room walks the second phrase, the rhythm of the phrase based on that first card. We could think, well, the first half of the room you have to walk like you're walking through Jello, or walk like you're walking through water, or walk like you're walking through. And I could picture the different imagery, and then have the second half of the room walk like they're on, covered in helium, or like they're on the moon, or walk like they're like there'll be all sorts of things. And then we think, well, now all of a sudden what would be happening in this room? And what we realize is that the moving body is able to be expressive. And if we're not actually flexing that muscle, then what sort of artists are we training in the students? If they're always just walking the rhythm and there actually is no expression in it, then what actually are we teaching them? And I'd have to argue it's probably not a lot about music. It's a lot about being a good little robot who knows how to play the right notes in the right order. And so much of the Dalcroze practice is really interested in pulling out the expressive body.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I had a similar instinct that you had the two groups. If there's an image, they could contrast or compare or
Yes.
interact with each other, and it all may depend on the song that you picked too. So if there was a song and you could justify having one group be the rabbits and the other group be the hunters or something, I don't know, whatever you picked that made sense, it would be kind of a cool experiment to see what you were able to come up with in that moment. But just to say that, I mean, just to say those little three cards, I mean, we just now riffed a great lesson that I feel like I could go in tomorrow and do something like this with my kids, just off of these three little prompts. And, I think it's really interesting to think about how you would use the cards in this way. So we just picked these. I could go in tomorrow and teach a lesson. The kids wouldn't even have to know cards existed, right? That would be fine.
Right.
Or what we like to do is we call the live version, which is that you pull cards right in your class in front of the kids and make yourself do that in the moment. Make yourself pull that trigger in the moment and say, okay, how am I going to make this work with this group right now? And maybe that doesn't always necessarily end up in the prettiest lesson, but it does build in you a certain flexibility and strength in your own ability to say, hey, there's a myriad of possibilities that I could do right now, and I'm going to flex a little bit and say any one of them I could do. And I think it's a little bit of a flex to be able to say that you can do that. Being good at the game would be saying, whatever cards you pull, no problem. I can make something cool out of it.
Oh no, that's really really adventurous, but it's really fun. Actually, I want to show you because
Oh, cool.
I do this kind of stuff. I mean, we do it in a way, but but I think the prompts that that you are using here are really great because as we use improvisation all the time, I mean, it's like these things. I mean, these are rhythms that my students have to pull out and use depending on the level. Sometimes they just need to, I mean, just, conduct. Sometimes they need to clap the rhythm. Sometimes they need to step the rhythm. Sometimes they need to make a melody with the rhythm, depending on their age and what are we working on. But these are very like dynamic rhythms. I mean, I can use them for anything. They don't have one application, and I think that's the case with your cards. I
Yeah,
mean, they are not. They don't have one thing that needs to be done. It doesn't have one outcome. You can use it, and you can train yourself to use the cards and say, okay, well, what can I do with this card? What can it can help you explore what you're going to do, and maybe at the beginning you just say, okay, with this card I'm going to do this, and that's it, and then with this card I'm going to do this, and that's going to help you build your self confidence and also your repertoire in
Yes.
as to exercises that you can do. And then after a while, you're going to say, oh, I can also do this with the same card. And then you realize that you can do a bunch of things with just one card.
Yeah, we claim that each of the cards really should have at least 20 answers. We kind of try to hold ourselves to a standard that would say we should be able to pull any card and come up with, 20 variations on any card. And then we also make the point in the book that particularly those starter cards, maybe you as a more tenured teacher, you don't even need those starter cards. You got plenty of starters. You already have, anybody who would buy this book who's already been teaching for some amount of time, whether you come from a Dalcroze background or not, it's very likely you have interactions that you think, oh, no, this is a thing we could do. And what you don't yet have is the Rolodex of ways to make variations on it. So we can picture
Right.
some teachers starting with their own lesson, but then starting with our second deck and our third deck to try to invent variations on them.
I think that's very gracious of you, but I think that even the starter card, even for a well-seasoned teacher, I mean, he could take the card and just take it out and go like, oh, well, I really didn't feel like doing this today, but
I
all
love
right,
that.
I'll do it. So it kind of like pushes you into going into a certain direction that's going to really, boost up your creativity and and your teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs the starter cards.
I
So
like that, Manuel.
we describe we suggest three ways to use the cards in the book, although we are hoping people are going to send us ideas of more ways. The first is to use it as the lesson planning version, where we picture somebody in their living room the night before, and instead of just pulling one card of each of the decks, we encourage everybody to lay out a grid of 3 by 3. Pick 3 starters, 3 make it musics, 3 challenge cards. And then as you're kind of thinking, how could this work? Read through all the cards and then put them in good orders. You think, oh, I could see how this
Hmm.
would lead pretty easily into this, make it music. And then I could do 2 of these challenges with it. We could do the first and the second challenge, and I could kind of build, and then we scribble down a bit of a lesson plan and maybe deal yourself a couple more sets and try to see how they go together. And then Anthony discussed the sort of pro version, the live version, where the teacher hasn't planned at all. And instead, they've challenged themselves to just read the card in the moment and try to make something of it. And you might do that with the students knowing the game, and they'll be thrilled to see their teacher having to sweat it out and come up with ideas.
You're gonna do that at a conference, aren't you?
We have
We've
already.
done it,
We've
yeah.
done it.
Yeah,
We've done
we've done
it.
several of them
And we've actually, it's been really, really
now.
wonderful
Super
to
great.
see how easy it is and how Anthony and I've been playing with these cards now for a year, and and I swear any of the cards match with any of the cards. Some are a little easier than others, but really we haven't been
Hmm.
stumped yet. You really can put any of the cards together. And so there's a live version where the teacher is trying to pull the cards for themselves and you're only pulling one card at a time. And then there's this third version where we picture the students playing it. Anthony, you've done some of
Yeah,
that.
sure. Yeah, I've done some of this. It's fun, so then maybe you put the students in small groups, or you do it all together, and you pull a card and you show it to the students, and you have them solve for it. You say, what do you think we should do here? Now, this is a great teaching tool for the students to then try to kind of, this would maybe be, students who've been with you a while, who've done some eurythmics, who kind of have an idea. Oh, okay, let's do this. And it's astounding sometimes what they come up with. It's beautiful, and it really pushes them to think about music and movement in a creative way and to sort of push those boundaries. So very, very cool.
Man,
We're kind of
how am
getting
I gonna
pressed for
get that
time.
book?
So I just wanted to say real quick, though, we do have the fourth deck, which is the teaching
Yeah,
artist
yeah, yeah.
deck, Manuel. And what it does, what we've found that teachers are doing with this deck is they'll take a card, and in the morning they'll put it out on their piano, and they'll just kind of look at it all day, right? And it's sort of an intention for you as a teacher, something for you to chew on all day for your own practice and your own well-being. This one says this, I just pulled a random one: practice care of students. Well, that's a pretty general kind of thing to think about. But maybe all day looking at that, well, I can just spin on that and can chew on that all day. And okay, well, these are kind of, there's 50 of them here, intentions for teachers. And it's meant to sort of drive you towards that teaching artist mindset, to think about your practices deeper than just, reciting your script or achieving today's goal. It's about a little bit more of a reflective practice.
Yes. Mhm.
The
And then for that one, you can just reverse the words. You can just say, instead of practice care for students, you can say care practice, and you can get a whole lesson out of that. Out of yeah, it's a beautiful.
Yeah, Anthony and I mean, Anthony, you guys are in the schools with the younger and through high school, and I was in that space for 23 years and am still teaching older students at the university. And depending on how the day is going and who your current crop of students are and who your administrators are and what sort of constraints people are putting on you, it's really possible to kind of lose sight of your own agency, your own artistry, and the zeal that brought you to the work to begin with. And so our hope is for the teaching artist cards, as they give people just ways to reflect on their practice, whether you pull the card at the beginning of a day and you use it as intention through the day, or you pull the card on your way out the door and you just think about it on your car ride home, trying to remind the adult that actually you're a person who
Mhm.
does profound work with really important students. And so the hope is that keeping that as part of the whole practice. The first three decks.
Show me another one.
Want another teaching artist card? There you go. Let's do another one.
Yeah.
Here's one here. Boom. This one says, make a connection with a peer teacher before or after class. So,
And so as people have spent a lot of years in the schools, you get too
Yes.
isolated, and one of my schools, the music class was always the farthest away because we made the most noise. So they put us at the farthest corner of the
that's
building,
true.
like really far away from anything else. And so
That
if
happens.
you didn't go out of your way to make connections with your
Yeah.
colleagues, they didn't even know what you did. And you just felt like nobody even knows what I do. And all of a sudden, that can be a negative spiral. And so there's all sorts of ideas, we could think, well, what would be the benefit of that?
Oh, that's great. I just want to mention my school, because they put so much importance. They give so much importance to performing arts, that the area for performing arts, music and drama, they are right at the center of the building, in on the third floor, right above the principal's office and everything. So we just have to open a door, and everybody's just walking by, and they're listening to the stuff that we're doing, and everybody's popping in and saying like, "Oh wow, look, kids are making music. That's great." Or every time parents go by, they see the kids moving around, throwing scarves, and it's really great. But I think that's very important, because teaching is a very solitary profession. It can be very, it can get lonely if you don't go out of your way sometimes and make a connection with your peers.
Yeah. So we have about 50 ideas. Some of them are more, more direct, like that last one, and others are just a little bit more of kind of stepping back and remember that you are there and why you're there. And so, yeah, we've gotten a lot of really nice feedback from it.
Of course.
I just wanted to mention also that in that challenge deck, there are, I think, 9 special cards that we call the strategy cards. And these are the classic Dalcroze interactions. So make it a follow, make it a quick reaction, make it a cannon. We talk about improvisation. We talk about replacements and systemizations. And so we have these 9 sort of classic Dalcroze interactions are specifically in the challenge deck. And for people who are new to the Dalcroze routines, we take a big chunk of the middle part of the book to explain to give a nice introduction to each of those techniques. The starters are just little things to get us going. The make it music is trying to figure out how do we get a basic interaction that actually doesn't always require music or sound or a musical intention. How do we find that intention? The challenges are mostly these ideas to be creative, but then in that same deck are these strategy cards, the 9 Dalcroze interventions, these kind of classic kinds of exercises that occur in many more traditional Dalcroze classrooms. And then that 4th deck is the teaching artist deck. And so that's the big.
Looks great. And what about the book? Where's the book?
My copy of the book is
I got
not
one
in the
here.
room here.
Hold on, I'll get it.
I don't think you'll get it. But yeah, the book fits nicely in the box. It's actually not very big. It's like the book is only 112 pages or something, but it's a nice compact sort of, there it is. It's a nice compact explanation of the cards. It starts with a little bit intro to Dalcroze sort of ideas, talking about the overall themes, and then it gets in, and then it also has, it's got in it a description of every starter card, an extra paragraph for every starter card, because we figure maybe some new teachers read that starter card and like, I can't picture this, I don't know what this is. And so we do that. We give them some ideas here for like how to set up your classroom for this a little bit better, how to how to succeed with this stuff. We go through each of those strategies. We talk about each of those. So and it's got all kinds of really useful background in it too for somebody who might not know that much about the practice, and interesting kind of insights for people who are experienced in the practice. We think people who are experienced Dalcrozians will love this book too and find it useful. We hope that there's a version of this that's interesting for everybody.
I think you did it. I think that those are the those are the 3 more powerful words I think I can tell you today. You did it, because this is like analog artificial intelligence. Because we can just it's like a second brain that you can just pulling stuff and then have something like, okay, these are things that I know, or things that I know how to do. I'm just going to, because as Stephen said, sometimes we are lost in the world of writing reports, of checking in with your tutees, doing for your students, maybe planning the next concert, etc. And sometimes planning gets a little bit left to whatever it is I did the last year. Whatever it is I did the other day. Oh, this one worked, so I'm just going to do that one. But if you have this kind of moving cards that can take you into a moving classroom, I think it's a really great way of doing it. And also, um, there are books from Dalcroze that Dalcroze wrote, and there's always a disclaimer at the beginning, and it really says literally, this book is only for the initiated in Dalcroze eurythmics. If you have not taken a course in Dalcroze eurythmics, this is going to be very confusing.
Yeah.
And it is. And any book that you read of eurythmics, if you have not made any practice, it's going to be confusing. But I think this works as an invitation to, okay, this is what you can do, and this is how you do it. And then, it's like I think it's a gateway book into Dalcroze.
That's our hope.
So congratulations.
Thanks.
It's thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to getting some feedback from you once you get a hold of one of the books.
Oh, absolutely! I'd love to.
Yeah, and then if anybody's online, should be following Manuel on all the socials. He's a great follow. A lot of his work is in Spanish, but a lot of it is not. I think, how many languages do you speak now, Manuel?
Only three. Only three, and I'm trying to learn Vietnamese, but man, that's hard.
Yeah. I bet. Well, Manuel does a lot of great work online. You should definitely check it out. You'll not be sorry. He's a writer. He's a content creator. He's an amazing teacher. And so, and I consider him a friend. Even though we've never been in the same room, I consider him a great Dalcroze friend. And so
Manuel has also been really prolific in posting ideas and lesson ideas and plans, and he has quite a few resources. So we really would like to encourage everybody to look him up. You'll find him easily, and subscribe to all the things that he's doing. There's some really wonderful teaching examples out there.
Thank you very much.